should just mention that in this, I'm playing the patient. Yeah, and my colleague is playing the therapist. And this is a therapy transcript, but it's been disguised and we're just enacting it.
Okay, I'm glad you told me that, because I can't help seeing you as a therapist. I might even start it a bit early again then.
Otherwise, when it got to the point where I'm talking about sexual fantasies, it would be very disturbing.
More or less.
Okay.
Got your holy shirt on today.
Yeah, it does kind of look holy.
Yeah, what I mean by holy is like the priest collar thing.
Yeah, a lot of clergy wear this.
Right.
And you got a brightly colored blue shirt on today.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's a bright blue.
Yeah. Well, Paul, it certainly seems like I don't possess enough confidence in myself. No matter what I do, I immediately start thinking negative thoughts. I talk myself out of anything I might be trying to do. I haven't got the confidence to do anything. Do you know what I mean?
So whatever plans you set out for yourself, you feel in your heart that you're going to fail, and you try to talk yourself out of trying? I bet that'll probably save you from failing in a thing or two, but it also might cut out a chance where you could succeed.
Right.
Do you think you need to have more confidence?
I don't know. Success at doing something would help me feel confident.
Yeah.
I express myself like a little kid would. I'm still going around the merry-go-round. I'm a little kid still. You see that, don't you?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but you feel like you're a little kid still. About how old do you think that is? Like high school or earlier?
Okay. Paul, do you want to relate this to the model so far?
Sure. So I'll say this is a guy who is about the age that you see me appearing with a diagnosis of schizophrenia. He's been plagued by a series of rather profound and bizarre delusions. And when those delusions aren't present, you get sort of just emptiness. The history of substantial substance abuse. He has a history of childhood sexual trauma, and also a head injury, or at least a brain injury secondary to lead poisoning. So that's a little bit of the background. So he sort of comes in, and then obviously I think my question as the therapist is, I'm wondering immediately sort of what is he here to do? What is the struggle that he's up against? What is he trying to enlist me to do? And I'm not going to assume that I know it. And I'm going to try to find some way to share my thoughts in a way that promote dialogue and promote his own thinking, so that he and I are thinking about him. And, you know, the merit model, I think like we talked about it some last time, is like going to the gym. And we want to emphasize activities that are going to help people become better able to think about themselves in complex ways and think about others. And so I think you can hear me early on asking, are you wanting to feel better? What is it you're telling me you want to do? What are you struggling to do? And I'm trying to be a partner in dialogue in some way that makes sense. The next two merit elements are getting a narrative and getting a psychological problem. So I would assume or would hope that with a few minutes, I'm going to ask about some times where this has happened, and we'll sort of hone in a little more about what he's struggling with. And maybe to get at one of the questions earlier about how does the merit model address these sorts of things, the idea isn't that these activities, these elements get us to the problem that we then solve. The idea is that these activities become opportunities to think, which improves the ability to think, so that thinking in overall gets better, that people's capacity to form ideas grows. Again, not to do these in order to get to the key thing, but that's the therapy itself.
Does merit have a conception of formulation?
So there's a shared formulation in the fourth element of whatever it is that the person is up against. And this would be relatively simply, jointly between the two of us, what's the really big problem you're facing? What are you really up against? can't remember if we talked about this, but I had a particular patient who said, what I'm really dealing with right now is this is the anniversary of my mom's death. And because of that, I can't enjoy anything and I'm all shut down. And I thought I sort of understood that, but I also didn't, because on the anniversary of my father's death, it's a time to sort of remember him and to know what to do. So my response was to say, I don't get it. And I told him, because on the anniversary of my dad's death, I don't feel like what you described. So why do you? And I really want to hold the person to describe it to me, not just lay it in my lap to fix. And what the guy who I said, I don't get why you react this way. He said, well, it isn't so much that she died, it's that I feel perpetually abandoned. And this is a memory of people abandoning me. And then that was a much richer sort of shared formulation. That his big problem is that he feels abandoned, and then, when feeling abandoned, acts in certain ways that are destructive to himself and other people.
So, Paul, just to clarify, your formulation is based on the, in a sense, the here and now of the presentation, and does not involve, let us say, purported causative factors from the person's past and so on.
Sure.
And it doesn't involve any kind of unconscious or kind of that kind of unformulated. It is
Sure.
As it presents, it's very phenomenological.
No, that's a really good point, and I think that's something that has struck me for whatever reason recently after I've given a series of talks. And I have no interest in playing the adventure, figuring out how you got here. And the world is full of rich, beautiful, elegant theories. And I have no way to know how accurate they are for leading to this particular set of problems the person has. And so my own stance is I don't care. It doesn't matter how you got here. Where you are is that things don't make sense. And this is a really difficult place you find yourself in. And having an explanation for why you're here is not helpful. Now, it could be validating that you've ended up struggling with things, and that anyone who experienced what you experienced would struggle with things. But I don't want to default to that as an explanation. So I have a story of going to one of the ISPS meetings, the International Society for Treatment of Psychosis, and there was a presentation there by some guy about he's convinced that psychosis happens as a result of the fetus achieving consciousness in the womb. And everyone is sitting there like, this is not insane. Someone needs to shoot you with a paintball gun, not an actual weapon, but it's like, you can't, there's no way to know that for sure. So, I mean, I feel like there needs to be theoretical humility in all of this, but some joint meaning making. And whatever that is, I need some, so if I come home and I'm really angry and I'm grumpy with my wife and I'm having a hard time settling in, I do want to form an idea of what caused it. But that's only useful in and of itself as guiding me about how to manage it and be more reasonable. So the end state, I think it's ultimately more existential than anything else. The end state is who you are in the moment and what you're becoming. And the past is contextually relevant. But I'm deeply suspect of, no matter the beauty of the theory, how it ends up in this spot. Yeah, so I think, deep familiarity with basic Freudian psychosis or Ogden or Searles in psychosis is really useful. But it isn't, I don't use it to know the answers to the test ahead of time. I haven't broken into the teaching assistant's office and stolen the answers, so I know. They float around in my mind and I wonder about them, and I'll use them in regular language with people. And again, I find them enriching, but it's a tool to make sense of the moment of the encounter with the person.
I must say I'm in agreement with you. Shall we keep watching?
I really don't feel like a little kid. It's the issues I talk about.
So how old are those issues, do you think?
15 years, maybe just over that.
In a 15 or 16-year-old's body? You worry about not having enough confidence to try?
Right.
Are you thinking that's where you got stuck in life, at 15 or 16?
Probably.
Well, what was going on for you back then?
Oh, I was going around with this group of preppy kids. We cut school every day, drinking every day. There were some mushrooms. One time a kid pocketed his mom's Valium, things like that. But I was kissing all the girls I could find.
Were there a lot of girls back then?
Oh, I had my fair share back then. I'm not the king of romance. I never did have a lot of confidence in myself. But I got my fair share of girls, more than some guys.
So even when you were a teenager, in regards to women, you didn't have a lot of confidence in yourself?
Right. I was just totally negative as a youngster. I was so shy. I mean, it all goes back to myself. I was a diseased kid. I needed some psychological help. But I didn't get it.
What do you think was missing that you ended up so shy?
Well, one thing, it was because my dad was sick. And I grew up surrounded by negativity. My mom was so old. I grew up in a house that I was afraid to show to your worst enemy in my family life. If you knew my brothers and my sister, you'd know what I'm talking about my family.
So there was something really wrong with your family?
It's so true.
And your mom was old, right? How do you think her being old led you to the negative? What are you thinking?
Well, I just got hurt because she was old, and I took things inwardly instead of outwardly. I think Mother was old, and I could tell she was too old when I was still a baby, because I can remember withdrawing back into myself. Hurt was one of the first recollections.
Sorry, Paul, I thought you were putting up your hand.
No, I'm sorry, I was rubbing my hands
Okay,
and thinking. Sorry, that was me thinking.
Do you want to, so I was just trying to think here if this is really agenda forming.
I think it's all four things happening at once.
Mm.
And so it seems like he's here to think about his lack of confidence. I'm here to make sense of having no confidence. We get some good narrative episodes growing up. There's a little bit about that. He's encouraged to think about it, and this sort of deeper psychological problem is emerging about having no confidence across his life.
Yes.
And I'm pretty smoothly able to wonder about things with him without setting him off. So, but he's here to think about himself and do something that he doesn't do in the flow of general life, which is to wonder about who he is and who is this human being who's ended up with these sets of dilemmas. I feel like the history is less about solving the initial hurts and more about a context for accepting how hurt he feels and how difficult it is to do the things that he wants to do in life.
Mm. Okay, we'll keep going a bit more.
As I can remember. And
So reaching out for love and feeling rejected, and then pulling back into your own body?
right.
So kind of like taking all the attachments from the world and pouring it into yourself.
Right.
So is that what you're still doing now? Is there
Sounds
still
like
that
Freud.
sense of hurt about you?
True, at least where I'm concerned. I don't trust anyone. That's the one thing I wanted to talk to you about. On the job used to be every time I tripped up, someone was out there tripping me. But I don't know whether that was the schizophrenia or...
Well, your earliest memory is reaching out to the world and feeling terribly hurt and pulling back into yourself. And then you say, hey, I don't trust anyone at all.
Right.
Well, those related, do you think? The hurt at the get-go and then pulling into yourself and not trusting people?
Maybe. I mean, I sort of think so.
Well, what do you think? Do you still have that wound from your mom?
Well, I think I never got over it. I don't think I got enough love from her, you know. Now, when my brother started growing, I felt like I wanted to accomplish the world, you know. I think love can make a lot of difference in people, the way they respond. You know, see, my mother never did hug me, kiss me, tell me she loved me, or treat me like something to be cherished. She never said I could be a senator or a congressman.
Yeah, like a lawyer, an astronaut, a baseball player.
Tennis player, a pro golfer. Just what it is. It is. There's no kind of love or inspiration. No one said to me, you could do this, you could do that, you could do anything. If you just try. There was no nurturing or bonding. Nothing.
With your brothers, though, when they gave you love, you felt like you could take on the world.
Well, I felt at one time I could. I felt better then than I've ever felt in my life. That was when I felt my brother Steve was active in my life. He loved me.
When was that, when you felt Steve's love?
When I was in my 20s. So I know that I missed out on a lot of things a lot of other people get that I never had a chance. It would have, maybe I would have felt confident. That's what I'm going through. All my life, somebody who has been hurt, I'm that person who's been hurt and can't get over it. Someone who, like, they never get the love they need and they never got the inspiration they need. Something like that.
So you've been stuck and not able to get over that.
Right.
You got some love from Steve.
I think that's why I feel bad all the time. Because I never got the love that I needed. Without the presence of someone who loves you, you just don't form the right idea in your head. Feelings of being loved and loving somebody.
Sometimes when babies aren't handled, they die. So yeah, people need that. So your job today is to find out, find a way to have as full a life as you can, even though you have this hurt. You've not been able to get over it.
That's exactly it.
And to be able to have some dreams for yourself and to feel good, to feel okay for yourself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that's simply stated, we sort of have come to what the agenda is. And I feel like that this patient and I have spent this time talking about what are you here to do? What are you here to figure out? And I think one thing I like about the session is I feel like he's driving the bus. He's in charge of this, and I'm listening, and I'm trying to understand. But I also don't feel like I've gotten the responsibility to come up with the solution. Maybe this is a potentially opens a reflection back on the excellent case presentation earlier, where it's completely up to the therapist to find the solution. Therapist has gone to the end of every theory to find the solution, and it's somehow come completely in his lap. And here, at least, this is a joint thing. And this particular patient is sort of coming in and he takes the lead. One thought back to the original case presentation is when I'm when I'm in the shoes of it's up to me to find the answers and we're not finding them, I always wonder, like, how come I got that job alone? How come it's not shared? And then I'm not going to confront the person and explain that it should be shared. I'm just going to ask, like, how come I got this? And in merit speak, that would be sharing my mind. That would be entering in as a partner in dialogue. Hey, how come I'm the only person here on guard duty for this?